Today we're in week 2 of our series on healthy conflict and healthy culture in the workplace. Tracy, before we get into managing your emotions for healthy conflict, let's just review what we saw last week, these basic building blocks for healthy conflict in the workplace or really anywhere. Courage plus empathy plus skill is what gives you healthy conflict.
Yeah, and I know for a lot of people, the thought of conflict in the workplace is super frightening, but I want to encourage you that just like we learned last week, that there's a lot of skill involved, that when you learn how to do it well, conflict doesn't have to be scary.
Yeah, and so today we're talking about managing your emotions in conflict. And Tracy, it's probably more appropriately called preparing to manage your emotions in conflict, because we're not even talking about the actual conflict just yet. That'll be next week. We're talking about sort of 3 tips for preparing yourself before you enter into that conflict. Number 1, pay attention to your internal signs. Are you nervous? Are you anxious about a situation or a person?
Yeah, so think about a conversation maybe you had with a coworker. Maybe they said something that really bothered you. It was like a veiled threat or was a passive-aggressive comment that it just didn't sit well with you. And as you think about what they said, it's creating angst inside of you. And you know that if you're going to move forward in a healthy working relationship, you're going to have to do something about what you're feeling.
Yeah, and most people, Tracy, would just ignore it. Most people would just say, it's no big deal. The emotions I feel, the angst I feel, or the anxiety around this conflict are enough to keep me from entering into the conflict. And we would just really encourage you, it's worth preparing yourself for the conflict. Even though it's scary, trust me, it's going to pay off in the end if you do.
Yeah, and that's where the courage piece comes into play. You might think that it might just be better to sweep it under the rug or just roll it off your shoulders, but the truth is, you guys, part of the courage is checking our own heart and our own emotions, that if we're bothered by something, we might think we can sweep it under the rug, but the next time that coworker says something that makes us mad, we're going to respond to not only that comment, but the one that came before it. So it's way better to deal with the situation and not avoid conflict, thinking that's going to be better for you in the end.
Yeah, now here's the next tip. Identify what you want from the conflict and what you don't want from the conflict. And ask yourself the question, do you believe that you can get both with the proper approach? So Tracy, give us an example. What are we talking about with these 2 lists?
Well, yeah, so I think like going back to that example, what do I want to accomplish if I go to that coworker and say, hey, that comment you made was really hurtful, or that felt very passive aggressive. What did you mean by that? So what would be the things that I would want to get out of that conversation? What are some things that I wouldn't want to get out of that conversation, which for a lot of people, they'd say, well, I don't want it to be an ongoing awkward situation, or I don't want to lose the friendship or make it weird for everyone else on the team that we had this misunderstanding. So really, again, taking the time to evaluate, what do I want? What do I hope to gain from this conversation? And what do I not want to have happen?
Yeah, I love this quote from the book. When faced with pressure and strong opinions, we often stop worrying about the goal of adding to the pool of meaning, and we start looking for ways to win or to punish or to keep the peace. And so I think it's important for us, even in this step here, is to keep the goal front and center. The goal is to add your perspective to the pool of meaning instead of just sort of sitting on it and never being heard or never addressing the issue that the conflict is around.
Right, and you want to also recognize that what you don't want is for that other person, let's say maybe they said something and maybe it was a little passive aggressive, or maybe it was a joke and they really didn't mean anything by it. Don't you want them to have that opportunity? Wouldn't you want that opportunity if someone just took something out of context or took something that you said that you didn't mean? Wouldn't you want the chance to make that correction? So you really want to, the goal of that conversation, it really needs to be about, hey, I just need to let you know that was hurtful to me. But be open to letting them say, I am so sorry, that isn't what I meant at all.
All right, one more tip, and here it is. Check your motives. Ask yourself this question: are you readying for a battle, or are you open to hearing another point of view?
This is, I think, the most important point, because I think what was so insightful from this book, Crucial Conversations, is this idea that we all write a story before we even have a conversation with someone. We're already having an emotional reaction to something that happened, and then we're kind of writing the story like, what we think they would say, what would we say if we had a conversation. We start to get emotionally charged then as we kind of build that storyline out. And the problem with that is you're only operating on the information you have. So that ability to be able to say, before I start writing the story and assuming everything about their intentions or what they meant or didn't mean, I need to just go and have the conversation and allow the pool of meaning to be filled with both people's perspectives, that I'm really able to listen to. They have a perspective that I should want to hear before I draw my conclusions.
So that's how you manage your emotions for healthy conflict. Again, you can use these tips, talk about it with a mentor or with a group. And next time when we finish up this series, we're going to talk about the 3 phases of that crucial conversation. So make sure to join us on that third topic in this important series on conflict in the workplace.